And we are off. We are live here on this Sunday evening, June 8th, 2 days before the start of the Miami Dolphins 2025 mandatory minicamp. We're going to talk about that a little bit um, tonight. A little preview, a little position by position outlook, what we want to see, what we expect to see. Understanding it is minicamp, it's not training camp with full pads, but still there are some things to be gleaned from the 3-day exercise that will begin on Tuesday. We will discuss the latest with Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, Zach Sealer, and all those good folks on the Dolphins who could be either on their way out, involved in contract situations, or the like. And then, as we always do, we will be taking viewer questions, comments. Hopefully, a bunch of you guys will be joining us this evening. We're off to a modest start so far. Again, hopefully, a bunch of other folks join us. If not, then it'll be more intimate. How's that? So, again, thanks for those of you who are on joining me. Please like, subscribe, share. This is the obligatory, call at the start of every episode. So, there it is. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The one news nugget that has occurred since last I did an All Dolphins podcast has been the report from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network on Sunday that Jalen Ramsey would not be attending the mandatory minicamp as the Dolphins and himself continue to work through the situation, ideally looking to make a trade to get him out of Miami, which appears to be his desire, and right now appears to be that of the Dolphins as well. This is zero surprise, zero that he would not be at mandatory minicamp, zero. In fact, let me go borrow the title of a movie from the 1980s. This is less than zero. And why? Because Jalen Ramsey right now wants no part of the Dolphins. Based on Mike McDaniel's comments and everything that's been reported, Dolphins want to move on as well. And while that's not been reported, wouldn't be a surprise in the least. In fact, this was what would make sense if the Dolphins reached out via his agent or directly and said, you know what, you're good. Stay away from the mini camp. Normally, there are fines involved if you do not attend the mandatory mini camp, which is the only part of the offseason program, which actually is mandatory for players to attend. The rest of it is voluntary, even though teams certainly would like to have perfect attendance if they can, and the Dolphins have had close to that, but not entirely. And we'll discuss those later on. But in this particular case, yes, the team can waive fines for players who don't show up if they choose to. And in this particular case, considering it's pretty clear the Dolphins don't want Jalen Ramsey around the team any more than Jalen Ramsey wants to be around the team at this time. So it makes perfect sense. As to when a potential resolution of the situation could occur, as I discussed earlier, and in a written column on MiamiDolphins on SI.com, where all the content is free and there's lots of it. And I'd like to think it's pretty good. Been at this for a very, very long time. So those not familiar with my written work, started on a full-time basis covering the Dolphins all the way back in 1989 for Dolphin Digest, which I did through 2021, taking on different roles at different points as well. Wrote for the Dolphins website actually for about 5 years. Since 2020, I have been the editor, publisher of what is now known as Miami Dolphins on SI. So again, despite what you may hear out there, I'd like to think I know a little bit about football and the Dolphins, a little bit, but we'll leave that up to your judgment. I'm not here to make claims and boasts and all that good stuff. The other players who were not present when Mike McDaniel talks about, I believe, what's unbelievable attendance, participation in the offseason program, again, we have to go by his word because the media is not allowed to attend phase 2 of the offseason program. And in the OTAs, which is part of phase 3, along with the minicamp, we were allowed to attend one practice a week. And in those 2 open OTAs, as we call them, the 4 players who were missing were the same each time. It was Jalen Ramsey. We know why. It was James Daniels because he's recovering from the torn Achilles tendon that cost him the final 12 games of his season with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. And the other two are tight end Jonnu Smith, defensive lineman Zach Sealer. Jonnu Smith, it's already been reported he wants a new contract. And the Dolphins have had trade discussions with the Pittsburgh Steelers, potentially looking for a new backup tight end since the one they acquired in free agency, Donald Parham Jr., tore an Achilles in practice, I believe it was last week. There have been no reports whatsoever regarding Zach Sealer, but you look at his contract, the last year where he's got any guaranteed money, he's making $7 million a year. He ranks, I believe it's 30th among NFL interior defensive linemen in average salary. Regardless of where you want to put Zach Sealer, there have been top 10 lists of interior defensive linemen come out recently. Sealer is not on those lists. If he's not 10, he's not far from it, whatever you want to put him. One thing is for sure, and the argument could be made, maybe he does belong in the top 10. That's a debate for another day. Again, team MVP last year. And if you recall, the two performances where the defense really underachieved were Arizona and Buffalo. The 2 games after Tua returned from IR. And lo and behold, those were the 2 games that Zach Sealer missed because of that freaky eye injury he sustained. Sealer comes back for the Rams game. Remember, he wore that visor, made a big play immediately off the bat, off a screen pass that he sniffed out for a long loss. And lo and behold, that might have been the Dolphins' most impressive defensive performance of the season, considering the opposition. And it helped them get their 1 win against a playoff opponent, that Monday night win against the Rams at SoFi Stadium. So Zach Sealer, bottom line, is massively underpaid for his production. He's got no guaranteed money beyond this year. Absent of the 2 open OTAs, not a very far stretch to put 2 and 2 together and suggest we have another issue of a player who wants his contract redone. Now, having said that, I don't necessarily expect Jonnu Smith and Zach Sealer to stay away from minicamp, but it's entirely possible that they will be at minicamp, but they won't be practicing, to stay away from the ever-popular fines, which I believe is somewhere around like $30,000 per day if you don't attend. Could the Dolphins force them to practice? No, not really. I mean, Zach Sealer says, my ankle's sore. I got a bad back. Not only that, the Dolphins also have to protect their asset there. So, no, Dolphins would not make either one of them practice if they show up, but told them, no, we're not practicing. We're here, Or was it Marshawn Lynch's famous line, I'm here just so I don't get fined? That could happen. So, possible also that they might skip. Either one of those 2 guys might skip the minicamp. Mind you, they're both represented by Drew Rosenhaus. And it has happened before also. There's a scenario where player doesn't show up at the minicamp, gets fined, and it's basically either forgiven or accounted for in a new contract they get. So it's not necessarily an end-all, be-all there as far as that's concerned. But definitely no Jalen Ramsey, which made sense all along. Zach Sealer, Jonnu Smith would expect them to be there, but not do anything. What's going to happen with those 2 guys? That's the next question. I maintain it's more than 50-50. Jonnu Smith still be with the team, but right now he wants more, obviously, than the Dolphins are willing to give. There's going to be some negotiating, some back and forth. There's going to be some posturing. There's going to be some public pressure put on by Rosenhaus. That's what he's paid to do. He's trying to get the best deal possible for his client, which is what he does when he goes on his weekly appearance on WSVN and says Jonnu loves it in Miami, wants to stay here. Best season ever for a Dolphins tight end last year, which it was. Statistically, I have a hard time saying Jonnu Smith had the best season ever for a Dolphins tight end. I think I would go maybe some guys who had obviously smaller numbers, but maybe bigger impacts. Thinking Keith Jackson in the 1990s. Somebody on social media suggested Randy McMichael at some point, perhaps. But clearly, again, this is going to be a back and forth. Same with Zach Sealer. I would be very, very surprised if Zach Sealer wound up not getting a contract extension. But again, it's one of those. Dolphins are not going to give him every penny he wants, and Zach Sealer right now is not at a point where he wants to accept whatever offer the Dolphins have made, assuming they have made one. And I think it's a pretty safe assumption that the Dolphins would like to address that. They have a couple of other players who could be in line for new contracts. Jordan Brooks is one who stands out. Aaron Brewer could be another one, another possibility. Devon Achane at some point is going to be somebody they might want to look at as he heads into his third NFL season. And there's the Jalen Phillips dilemma with him right now playing on his fifth-year option at $13 million. And then there's the issue of Jalen Phillips' health. So you can understand the Dolphins probably wanting to wait a little bit to make sure he's going to be okay. And there's not going to be a cumulative effect to where he can't regain the form he had shown at his peak after missing the end of 2023 with the Achilles, the end of 2024 with the ACL. So there's a lot going on as far as that's concerned. That's off the field stuff. For those wondering about the ramifications with Jalen Ramsey, and I had somebody suggesting why don't Dolphins just cut him? Well, because they can't. His current salary cap number for 2025 is $16.7 million. If the Dolphins were to release him, his salary cap number would jump to $30 million. And right now they don't have that cap space to make it work. They would have to make another move to take on $30 million of dead cap space for Jalen Ramsey. So in other words, not happening. As far as for a trade, those wondering what it means, the cap space for Jalen Ramsey goes from 16.7 to 10.7 if traded, but then you carry 18.4 towards next year. This is courtesy of Spotrac, and one of the two great salary websites around. So that takes care of that situation. As far as on the field, again, this is still minicamp, still off season, so it's still shorts and shirts, the same scenario, the same as OTA. They're going to have some 7-on-7 drills. They're going to have some 11-on-11. There's no contacts. It's, again, shorts and shirts. What do we want to see? This is a time of year that's not necessarily for the trenches, even though you're going to hear stuff like Bradley Chubb had a good day. Chop Robinson had a good day. Kenneth Grant did some good things. Zeke Biggers had a TFL. Take that really with a grain of salt, more so than what happens in the passing game, again, because of the nature of there being no contact. You see a running back, if he's listed as having a really long run in off-season program practice, understand nobody's tackling him to the ground. So is it possible if he goes through an arm tackle or through an arm in an off-season program practice, would he have the same result in a regular practice or even in a game? Who knows? What you're looking for basically is quick movement at the line when the running back hits the hole. That's what you're looking for. And then for the offensive line and the defensive line, you're looking at how they get off the ball, how they move. And then there would be more technical stuff, which are the coaches. And we certainly don't get access to that film that we could review later to see how the guys did. What we can eyeball at that precise moment more so would be passing stuff. So to that end, Tua is going to look very good. These sessions are made for him. He's going to look good in the offseason program. He looks good in training camp more often than he doesn't. That's just his setting. Zach Wilson, we saw 2 open OTAs. The first one, which was the second OTA period, the first one that was open to the media, it didn't look good in terms of the decision-making, quickly deciding on a receiver, getting the ball out. The second open OTA was a massive jump where he threw the ball really well and made quick decisions. The other quarterbacks, again, Brett Gabbert's a camp arm right now. Quinn Ewers throws a pretty ball when he's getting to the second level, maybe a little further down the field. Not a whole lot of connections. Again, how much of that is the timing with the receivers? That could be part of it. Maybe more important at this particular juncture that he does throw that pretty ball to the second level. He's a guy you want to see jump out as wide receiver. Again, in the 2 open OTAs, I'm not sure we saw Nick Westbrook-Ikhine catch 1 pass. It's 2 practices. Doesn't mean anything. Still, this is a guy who's supposed to be your third wide receiver option. Would like to see him maybe get a little bit more involved. Malik Washington looked very good in the 2 open OTs we saw. He's catching the ball very smoothly. This is kind of the stuff you're looking for. Outside of that, in terms of tight ends, some good-looking young tight ends. Jalen Conyers had a nice play in the first OTA. Tanner Connor had a nice catch and made a couple of plays as well. But again, at this time of year, on the defensive side, it's the cornerbacks. That's where our eyeballs have to be. And this is Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Isaiah Johnson, who I think there's something there with that kid who could be my dark horse to make a major move and play a much more significant role than anticipated. He's a guy I'm certainly going to watch. Cam Smith, I've been watching him the entire time, and the early reports, without providing details I'm not supposed to provide based on the Dolphins reporting policy, it's not great so far. Again, still and I apologize for always prefacing this, but no definitive conclusions should be made by what we're seeing right now. It's the off-season program. Having said that, you guys clearly want to know what's going on, and what's going on is right now there's nothing encouraging going on as far as Cam Smith's concerned. That tells me, big year 3 jump coming up. Nothing to suggest that so far. We'll see. Hopefully we see some signs of that. And we're on cornerback watch with the Dolphins preparing to start their veteran minicamp 2 days from now. I don't expect them to make a move for a veteran at that position at that time. The dead period, end of June, early July, the days leading up to training camp, that's when you can make a move. You remember last year they signed Emmanuel Ogbah right before the start of training camp after Shaq Barrett bailed on them. Certainly could see a scenario where that happens. July is also the time when Asante Samuel Jr., formerly of the LA Chargers, who's got something, but had, per report, neck surgery in the offseason, which obviously is very concerning. He's supposed to report back to teams. Ideally, the medical report checks out, and the Dolphins can revisit him, maybe bringing him in. Maybe they revisit. Maybe they've held off on making any move at cornerback because that's their target, and they want to see what happens. Does Rasul Douglas re-enter the picture at some point after they brought him in for a visit? That's certainly a possibility. At this point, I would be surprised if there wasn't at least one veteran cornerback added to the equation, but who knows? I think that about covers it in terms of previewing minicamp. If I have other thoughts that pop into that noggin of mine, I will make sure to obviously go ahead and do it. And let's go ahead and go to my favorite part of this, actually, those live shows, is the Q&As with you guys, the comments, the questions, whatever, because the beauty of these live shows is the interaction between me and you guys, and don't think I don't appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys being on here, and let's get to it. And I appreciate donations even more. Gary Williams, thank you, Gary. Why can't Miami hold on to Ramsey for a while? There will definitely be injuries at cornerback throughout the league, and some team may become desperate. That would be one argument for it. The other argument, the argument against it, and the other argument for it would be you hang on to him a little bit, and who's to say that the relationship, if fractured, can't be repaired, and maybe there's a change of heart from one side or the other, and there can be a mending of the fences, and you keep Ramsey. The problem, again, is based on all the reporting and all the indication and all the sense that we have is, I don't know if it's irreparable, but it's close to it. And the problem is you hang on to Ramsey, training camp, the start of the regular season, it has a potential of becoming a toxic environment where if you're somebody who believes in intangibles and the chemistry of the team and all that, it could do more harm than good to hang on to him. That's why I don't see a scenario where the Dolphins hang on to him. I'd be surprised if they brought him to training camp, to be honest with you. I wrote a column on the site, MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com. Again, please check it out. Basically suggesting that the Dolphins should not rush to do anything, because really there's a week of minicamp left for them around the league. Some teams have 2 weeks left in their offseason program. After that, it's 5 weeks. of nothing going on. So there's no rush for the Dolphins to do anything right now because part of the equation is their leverage is as low as it's going to be right now. And the longer you wait, absolutely, the more there's a chance that there's a contender somewhere who loses a cornerback, whether it's freak injury working out on their own during the downtime or in training camp early on, which would be one argument for keeping him. But again, you have to weigh that against the possibility of a bad situation kind of spreading negative energy around the team. So that would be my take on that. I'm having a hard time. Whoa, why can't I navigate this? Apologize, you guys. Gary, you went to this one here. Okay, this is not going well. Oh, here we go. Noel, love Noel. Thank you, Noel, for the donation. Much appreciated. Noel, you're a funny dude. I have to say that. Can you remember another year when the cornerback room was so weak? Seemed like we always have one star on the team. Yeah, it has been a while. God, I'm going to throw people under the bus here, aren't I? I am trying to think like in the, let's say in the 80s, I'm going to go way back here. And if you've been a fan of the Dolphins for a very long time, the cornerback room wasn't great. They had Paul Langford and William Judson were the two starting cornerbacks, and they were serviceable players, let's put it that way. And then the Dolphins got into a mode where they wound up getting good quarterback after quarterback. They got Tim McKyer, acquired him in a trade one year in 1990. He was a really good cornerback, but he was a bit chatty. And by a bit, I mean not like this. I mean like this. And Don Shula traded him after 1 year because he couldn't deal with it. Because the dude liked to chat. And in fact, I wrote something about that on MiamiDolphinsInside.com. Players of Dolphins, high-end players of Dolphins acquired and then later traded not long after, as is going to happen with Jalen Ramsey, barring a surprise. And then after that, they drafted Troy Vincent, 7th overall in 1992. Dude was really, really good. He wound up being part of the purge. In fact, I had this discussion on social media at one point about the biggest talent purge in one off season for the Dolphins. And I think somebody made the good point of 1975 when they lost Zonka, kicking Warfield to the World Football League. And then that one in 1996 when Jimmy Johnson took over, the salary cap wasn't in great shape. And the Dolphins allowed Irving Fryer, Troy Vincent, Brian Cox, and Marco Coleman to leave via free agency. To get their cap in order under Jimmy Johnson. That was a pretty bad talent drain as well. And then this year, Calais Campbell. Who's the other one? Teron Armstead, Javon Holland to a certain extent. I mean, he's a big name, and he's a high potential safety, even though I still think maybe. But to answer your question, Noel, yeah, it's been a while since the Dolphins have had what is a rather nondescript cornerback room. I think that's the best way to put it right now. So. Let's see what else we got here. And now we can get it moving. Smith, and thank you very much for the donation. As always, I don't need to tell you guys how much I appreciate those. Very, very kind of all of you. Uncle Ron, what you got for me, Uncle Ron? Thank you very much for the donation. If Tua misses several games again early on for whatever reason and results are bad, is there any chance McDaniel and Greer are fired mid-season? GM fired mid-season is practically a non-occurrence that just practically never happens. And the results would have, for Mike McDaniel to not make it through the end of the season, the results would have to be really, really bad. I mean, really bad. And this would mean chances are likely, Tua going down and Zach Wilson being Zach Wilson of the Jets and not this new version that we hope he will become after his 1 year under Sean Payton with the Broncos, even though we have no data to tell us there's going to be a major change because he never played in the regular season. What we have is those reports from training camp and the preseason that indicate he was really good. But a big difference between the preseason and the regular season. So we shall see. But it would have to be really, really. Chris Greer, no way. it would have to be really, really bad for Mike McDaniel to not make it through the season. Thank you very much, Stefan Birkenfrau. I'm going to guess you're German. Thank you very much for the donation. Are you surprised there was no deal in place for Ramsey? Not at all, and I will tell you why. This is something I've discussed, but I will tell you again. The issue with Jalen Ramsey is not that teams don't want to trade for his quality of a player because he's a stud. I don't know. I saw somebody put him as a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. Is he still that? Maybe, maybe not. But he's a really, really good player. And also, don't lose sight of the fact that his skill set he's physical enough, he can move well enough, and he's more than smart enough to make the transition to safety like Charles Woodson and Rod Woodson did later in their career and be really, really good at it. You would think there would be a market for Jalen Ramsey purely as a player. The problem is the contract. He's got $21 million guaranteed coming to him in 2025. And logic would tell you, and he's about to be 30, logic would tell you that some teams would like to have him, also would like for the Dolphins to bear some of the financial responsibility of this. And this is where you have the back and forth in the negotiations, because it's going to affect whatever the Dolphins can get in return for him. For example, if a team comes to the Dolphins, we'll take Jalen Ramsey. We'll go ahead and pay salary. It's full compensation for 2025 because of some of it. Most of it's an option bonus. So if you say salary, it's a loose term. We'll pay all of his compensation, but since we're inheriting all that financial commitment, we'll only give you a 6th-round pick for him. Well, the Dolphins might say that's not nearly enough, in which case the other team might go, well, if you want anything better than that, you're going to have to pay some of that compensation. And you go back and forth. How much of the compensation are the Dolphins going to be asked to pay for what kind of return in terms of a draft pick? So this is where we are. But no, I'm not surprised it hasn't happened yet. Even though it was very easy to think, well, post June 1st arrives and he'll be traded because now the cap hit can be spread over the next 2 years instead of all occurring this year, which helps this year. But understand it's still $30 million of cap hit that you have to take. The question is whether you take it over 1 year or you take it over 2 years. So we'll see how that turns out. Clyde Taylor, thank you very much, Clyde. Much appreciated. How complex is this playbook? Everyone giving time to tight end Smith and Tyreek. Doesn't Nick Westbrook-Ikine get time before we get down? Sure, absolutely, without question. Having said that, yes, it's complex. They do a lot of different things that some other teams don't do. This notion that it's, 17 volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica that you have to memorize in a week. I don't know that quite that much, but yeah. And again, this is why I prefaced everything with it's very, very, very early. Doesn't mean I still wouldn't like to see the guy catch some balls. I want to see it, catching some balls maybe in traffic, getting open on a route. Understanding that, yes, I'm trying to remember. Tyreek's not a good example because he's such a freak athlete, but I can tell you that, I don't remember the first training camp. The first offseason program, but I remember the first training camp that Tyreek was lighting it up. It was a joke that nobody could cover him. And he was catching 6 passes every practice. So, yes, nobody is making any sort of long-term judgment. It's just for my preference. It would be nice to see him get involved a little bit. Claim we got this. Okay. I got to put this up. Finspin, the Mad Greek. Hi, Alain. I relied on your work as my primary source for Dolphin news. I was a Dolphin Digest subscriber for a few years in the early 1990s. Nice. Fins news was hard to come by outside the Miami market back then, so thanks for that. Yep. Like I said, started in 1989. First regular season game I covered, and I hate to bring back a bad memory for those who go all the way back. If you remember, they were playing the Buffalo Bills at home. I think it was called Joe Robbie Stadium at that time. and the Dolphins lost 27-24 on a Jim Kelly quarterback. I'm going to say it was a quarterback draw on the last play of the game. And it was not a happy place there at the old ballpark. This was sent earlier. Stephen Wilson. Hey, Stephen. Apparently, I ain't the only one saying that Chucky should be our number one choice if we need a new head coach. I think there's also a Vegas line on it as well. I have not seen that, but John Gruden, interesting. Quarterback guru. So since if the Dolphins go with Tua again next year, which is a likelihood considering he's got $54 million guaranteed or 56, one of the two. John Gruden would make sense if the Dolphins move on from Mike McDaniel, which certainly not sure would be the case. So Jay Live Doe, I read some teams see Ramsey as a safety now. What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. He still can play high-end cornerback. There were a couple of games last year where he had some issues. The two that come out, there's people have pointed out a third one. The two that stand out to me is Marvin Harrison Jr. gave him a really hard time, and Gary Wilson gave him a hard time. I can't remember. There might have been somebody else, but he's still a high-end, definitely top 15 cornerback in the NFL, maybe top 10 as a safety. I think the possibilities are really, really interesting as to how good he could become. What's up? Got to wear a Dolphins hat sometime. Yeah, right. I think I had said when I reach 15,000 subscribers, and I did wear it. And I think I said when I reach 20,000 subscribers, we'll go hat and a jersey. How's that? Or a playoff win. 20,000 subscribers or a playoff win. And if I forget, because that can happen, please remind me. Sunday, June 8th is when I made this. Marcellus Poop needs a Panthers hat since they made 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. I actually do have a Panthers hat. I don't know how well it fits. You know what? I should actually wear it. And for those not aware, along with covering the Dolphins, I covered the Panthers for various outlets, including the Associated Press, including the Panthers website as well, including NHL.com for about 20 years. The last year I did it was the year they went to the final against the Vegas Golden Knights and lost. And then at that point, became too much on my plate to devote the amount of time to Dolphin coverage that I wanted to do to provide you guys with the best possible content I can provide. And now the last 2 years, the 2 years after I leave, they're back in the final too. So maybe I can hear the whispers right now. Yeah, you should stop covering the Dolphins. Maybe they'll win a playoff game, or maybe they'll go to the Super Bowl. Maybe someday I'll do that. I don't know. Steven, wouldn't be surprised if we find him if he decides to show up. LOL. Yeah, it's funny. Yep, that's funny. I agree with the Panthers hat for Poop. Yep, I'll do it. I'll do it tomorrow. Thank you, Steven. That deserves this. Much appreciated. No, Richard. Oh, dude, are you barking up the wrong? Enough Expos had let it go already. My Lord, are you barking up the wrong tree? I don't know if it's going to do anything if I do this, but this is what you get for that. There you go. Yep, that's what you get for that comment. Number one, I think if you folks have followed me long enough or read the comments on the various episodes, and I do read the comments, and I reply to several of them. A couple of pet peeves. Number one, obviously, don't be disrespectful. No name calling. And also, please don't tell me what to do. Seriously, you can tell me like, I wish you'd do an episode without the hat. It's a lot different than let it go already. Sure, that'll work really well with me. Marcellus, wonder if the Panthers make it 2 more times, will he get tired of them like Kansas City? That's one. No. I think I prefaced it. Did I not preface it when I talk about my CFS that it's boring? To me, it would be boring for anybody around the NFL other than if you're a Chiefs fan, which I think that would go without saying. So no, I would not be bored. if they were to go back 2 more times. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think I might have preferred a different Stanley Cup final matchup this year, but hey, we'll see. The way it started out so far with the first 2 games, both in overtime, and the Friday game was completely off the charts. And I do hesitate to call it the best Stanley Cup final game ever, as I saw some people put out there, just like today they put out there that the Carlos Alcaraz, Yannick Skinner French Open final was the best tennis match ever. And it's like, why is everybody in such a hurry to call everything the best ever? It's like, and me being contrarian by nature, no, yes, just a little bit. Immediately when I hear that, it's like, no, it's not. Let me think of one that's, and you know, I grew up in Montreal in the 70s watching him win 6 Stanley Cup titles in 10 years. I think there might have been more exciting games, but I didn't do the research. And for tennis, I think I can, for those who like tennis, Borg McEnroe, Wimbledon 1980, pretty sick. There was a Federer Nadal Wimbledon final that was also pretty sick. So, Jojo, I'm here, Mr. Poupart. Love the show. Thank you very much. Fins up, brother. What we got here? Thank you, Dave. Nothing wrong with the Expos hat. It's history. For those not familiar with the reason, born and raised in Montreal, it's an ode to my hometown team. And also, it's also an ode to cities that have had displaced franchises. Just like I have a Seattle Supersonics hat. I have a Quebec Nordiques hat. I've been meaning to buy a Hartford Whalers hat because I feel bad for those cities that lost teams like that. Sorry if that bothers anyone, but such is life. Uncle Ron, thank you very much again. With the benefit of hindsight, do you think they make the decision to extend 2 as opposed to the 5th-year option? Sadly, I believe they would. Well, for me, you know, my hindsight was I said all along that they shouldn't, but they didn't listen to me. I don't know that you know what, well, obviously if they knew Tua was going to get hurt last year, they wouldn't have done it, and they certainly wouldn't have guaranteed the amount of money they guaranteed him. I'll still allowing for the possibility that maybe they would have done it, that it was part, again, this was a summer of everybody gets a new contract, and Tua was a big part of their operation for in 2022, 2023. So it's easy to think no way in hell they would have done it again, but who knows? Clyde, thank you again. Clyde, much appreciated. Who, if you could choose of all-time wide receivers with Marino to win a championship every in Dolphin history? Okay. Who would be 1 through 4, just having fun, live through all the 80s, born 1973, just fun. So 4 wide receivers. Paul Warfield would be 1, without question. Jarvis Landry in the slot would be 2. If you want to go 2 outside, 2 slots, it'd be Jarvis Landry or Jim McDuffie in the slot. Outside, we'd Paul Warfield and I think it'd be pretty sick to think how much over the top Marino could go with Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, I think that would be my choices. Outside Warfield and Tyreek Hill, 2 slots, Jarvis Landry or Jim McDuffie. Interesting question. I like that, though. Clyde, thank you very much. Clyde, much appreciated. Stefan, thank you very much again, sir. Is Greer the worst kind of NFL exec? For every good there is bad. For every bad there is good. Too good to be fired. Too bad to win big. Interesting thought. Yeah, it's a good point. It's also that place you don't want to be. It'd be a lot easier if the Dolphins had a couple of back-to-back 4 and 13s to where there would be no questions asked. And a lot of people wanted Chris Greer's firing after last season. If using, pardon me, the lack of a playoff win as a gauge, fact remains they made the playoffs in 2022 and 2023. Yes, I know the standard should be higher than that, but it wasn't for a lot of years. Remember, between after 2001, which was their 5th consecutive playoff appearance. It wasn't until 2008 that they made the playoffs. And Chris Greer wasn't the GM for that. And then it wasn't until 2016 that they made the playoffs for that. That was his first year as GM. So I get it. It's an easy target, but I don't know that it's that simple. It's more like an organizational failure than it is easy to point at one guy. It's not been good enough, without question. It's not been good enough, though. Clyde, sir, thank you very much. Again, I was in Cleveland. My dad was a fan of the Browns. Father's Day gift, front row Dolphins side when he tore his Achilles, October 1993. Yep. And memory serves, Scott Mitchell threw a pick 6 not long after he came into the game, but the Dolphins rallied to win. Wound up putting themselves at 9-2 with not only Marino getting hurt, Scott Mitchell also got hurt. Steve DeBerg took over at quarterback. Dolphins got themselves to 9-2 after that Thanksgiving Day game win at Dallas in the snow, the Leon Lett game. Keith Byers, Snow Angel in the end zone. And then the Dolphins lost their last 5, missed out on the playoffs, lost their last game at New England in overtime against Drew Bledsoe, who was a rookie at that point. So let's see what we got here. Okay, whoop, nope, sorry, Clyde, hold on. Okay, we're back here. As Jeff is saying, Jeff, you got it right. Please make sure you hit all the thumbs up. I can't even see on mine where the thumbs up are. Nick Westbrook, Yakine learning playbook, as everyone says, it takes time. Tight end took 2 weeks. Okay, the Jonnu Smith didn't know the playbook, which is why it took him 4 weeks to get involved in the offense. That's maybe a stretch. I think a lot of it also was in the first game and a half. Tua still was trying to go over the top to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. Then you had the issue of the backup quarterbacks coming in, and then with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle against Seattle. So there was more involved. It's Jonnu Smith's slow numbers early on was more than simply he has to learn the playbook. I think that's too simplistic. Big Bad Jeff, thank you, sir. How much does the paying of players in 2026 that aren't on the roster scare you? Example, this year we're paying Xavier $15.7 million. 2026 is the worst year for this in quite a while. Yeah, and it may be affecting the way the Dolphins are doing business, without question. Should the Finns target players instead of picks for Ramsey, depending on which player is available or is made available? Sure. Jack Allen, is there anything to the speculation the front office and locker room prefer Weaver over McDaniel as head coach? I don't know where you got that, heard that. I haven't read that. Is it possible? It's possible. But that's not abnormal that you would have a faction of teams that prefers one of the coordinators instead of the head coach. Okay, what do we got here? No, thanks again. As always, much appreciated. With Ross being mostly hands-off and his stellar financial support, wouldn't a quality GM find the Dolphins a desirable landing spot? For who? I'm not sure I understand the question. No. Wouldn't the quality GM find that? Got it. No, now I understand what you're asking. Sure, but he's been very loyal to Chris Greer, without question. Yeah, you would think it would be a good job. Absolutely. Not only that, for depending on how much money you get paid, there's no state income tax. So yes, it should be a desirable destination for a potential GM. And yet, I don't know that they've hired necessarily high-end GMs, either ascending or in the prime of their careers. So, Uncle Ron, does Ross feel any ounce of shame over the on-pitch failure? And if so, why can't he show the humility to stop hiding from the media and apologize? Does he feel shame? I don't know if he feels shame. I know he's very massively disappointed. Again, you're dealing with a guy with his money, with his success in real estate. Don't think it's not destroying him inside that he hasn't been able to have that kind of success as a football owner because there's a lot of pride and ego involved there. So as far as why is he not talking to the media, I think the lawsuit played a role in it. I think I don't know exactly why he hasn't, since what was it now, 4 years ago. It's not like we haven't requested to talk to him, and he used to talk periodically and at the start of every training camp before the very first practice. That stopped. You're not wrong, though. I don't know that there are a ton of owners around the league who never speak to the media, so that's not necessarily a good look. Clyde again. Thank you, Clyde. Clyde, I'm so happy to catch you live. I've been watching with coffee on Monday. Thank you so much for your coverage. No, thank you, Clyde. So much appreciated. And the fact that you're a coffee drinker makes you even more okay in my book. In fact, I almost love you because I'm a massive coffee drinker. Tim Hortons usually is my cup of tea, but I love coffee. Anyway, Dana, buddy, thank you, Dana. Much appreciated. Dana's one of my dudes. Which player on the Miami Dolphins do you predict will have the most sacks in 2025? Oh, man, that's a good question. That's a great question, in fact. Zach Sealer led the team last year. Chubb Phillips coming back from injuries. Chop had 6 in the second half of the season. Wow, that's a good question. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think I would be tempted to lean toward Chop Robinson. Do not hold me to it. Don't place bets on it because of you asked and I answered. Let's see what we got here. Zach, why didn't the Dolphins sign players like Wilkins, Holland, AVG, Hunt when they were cheap and inexpensive? Because it takes 2 sides to make a deal. What's this? By the way, this is how I discovered the hearts. I just did this one day, and all of a sudden plop, it goes on my laptop. As I've said many times before, I'm not necessarily technologically advanced. So when I just did this 2 to tango and up go the balloons, I didn't know they was going to do that. So that's actually cool. It takes 2 sides to make a deal work. And don't think we should always, because I know that the thought process is good teams get ahead of those deals. Again, it takes 2 to make a deal. They offered Christian Wilkins a pretty good deal before he played his option year? Didn't pan out. Javon Holland didn't pay as much money as they wanted, as he wanted to get. And he wasn't. Some of those guys are. It's like the Dolphins can offer him all they want to try to get ahead of those deals and try to pay him what they want, what they feel they can afford for that player. If the player thinks they're going to get more in the open market and they say no thanks, we'll take our chances. What are you going to do? I don't blame him for every one of them. Hunt's a tough call because he's a guard, and guards don't make it. I'm going to be careful how I phrase this. You look at the teams that have major success, go very far in the playoffs, they don't necessarily have massively paid guards. And I'm going to use the same example as Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson. You want to have that kind of guard, that's awesome and all that. And they were great players, maybe both Hall of Famers. Number of combined conference championship game appearances for their teams, the Colts and the Cowboys, is 0. There's something. I'm a strong believer in positional value, and I think the Dolphins are as well. I'm not an analytics guy, but I do believe in that. So Robert Hunt is a hell of a player. I like him. He's a good dude. He's a good guy to have in the locker room. Got paid an awful lot of money to play guard. AVG, that's a whiff, no question about it. Especially considering the first contract he got in Minnesota. Christian Wilkins was one of those. Again, anybody really wanted to give him the contract the Raiders gave him? Is he that kind of defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman? Look, Zach Sealer's getting his annual average like $7 million. Christian Wilkins is 28. I mean, Now, Zach deserves a lot more than that. Maybe deserves as much as 15. There's still a big difference between 15 and 28. And if the Dolphins are offering in the neighborhood of 20 and Christian says, no, I'm good, what are you going to do? Again, takes two. And I remember seeing the number of the offer the Dolphins supposedly offered Wilkins. I threw out 20. I don't know if it was exactly that high, but it was somewhere in that neighborhood. Or this is where you wanted to even have conversations, and the Dolphins decided no. Because again, Christian Wilkins is a very good player. Is he Chris Jones? Is he Aaron Donald? Is he Dexter Lawrence as a defensive tackle? Answer is no. Jim Kelly draw. Yep, Jim Kelly draw. What else we got? Zach, how can we ever expect to win anything in the AFC with Tua at quarterback? Dude, if the team around him is really good, let's put it this way. I don't think it's Tua himself who's going to get the Dolphins to the cusp of a Super Bowl title. It's also not Tua who's going to keep him from getting there, if that makes any sense. If the talent around him is good enough, again, I don't think it's Tua who's going to be the issue. Like, is Jalen Hurts by himself getting the Eagles to the Super Bowl? Does it help to have like great talent around them? Okay, same difference, as far as I'm concerned. Yep, Claude, I already addressed this one. Another Dolphin Digest subscribers here back in the early 80s, if I remember correctly. It wasn't around the 80s. In the early 80s, I was not with Dolphin Digest at that point. Yeah, nice. Stop covering the Dolphins. Hurry. That hurts my feelings. Okay, I'm better now. God, I hate when you guys in comments put he. I don't know who you're addressing. Like, I'm not going to see this. No, the Washington Nationals are dead to me. They've never actually been born to me. I resent baseballreference.com. When you look up Montreal Expos, it doesn't show up. You have to go through Washington Nationals to get their history. Like, they didn't play in Montreal much longer than they have in Washington. So no, hell to the no. Thank you very much, sir. Or ma'am, sorry. My apologies for assuming. You're on the big screen. I'm on the big screen. Oh, cool. Nice. I like it. When you say Ramsey is top 15, aren't you saying he's a mediocre number one quarterback in the NFL? No, I undershot it right there. I apologize. I misspoke. Let me read. He's nice, better than top 15. He's top 10. I think PFF did a ranking here. Hold on. Let me try to look at this. I know they had Sauce Gardner ahead of whatchamacallit. Here we go. This is Pro Football Focus. Again, no, they're not end all be all just because they say so it is. I'm just using that as a point of reference. They have Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain the second. Pat Surtain's better than Sauce Gardner to me every day of the week. Trent McDuffie third. McDuffie's really, really good. Jalen Johnson, Chicago Bears, another guy who's not necessarily well known, but he's really good. Derek Stingley Jr., fifth. Dude's a baller. DJ Reed, Detroit Lions. Ramsey's better than him. Marlon Humphrey, Baltimore. Humphrey's good because he creates turnovers, but he can be bad. Christian Benford, he better than Jalen Ramsey? I don't know. Jair Alexander, dude's hasn't been healthy in 4 years. No. Denzel Ward, and Cooper DeJean. Oh, no, they keep going. Cooper DeJean, they have 11. I think Mitchell's actually better than him. Devon Witherspoon, Seattle's a good player. Christian Gonzalez, New England's a really good player. They have Jalen Ramsey 14th. Yeah, I am. So let's put him anywhere 10 to 12. Let's do that. Oh, a little hockey question here. I will make it quick because I know some folks will get offended by it. Can the Panthers afford to keep Bennett, Marchand, and Ekblad? Ain't going to be really, really tight. I saw a number today on how much cap space they have, and it was 19 million maybe. Going to be really tight. If I were to prioritize, Bennett's the one you keep because he's just playoff hockey. Marchand's the same deal. You look at the poster child for a playoff hockey player, that's him, except he's up there in age, so Bennett should take priority. Papa Hog, salute to you. Salute. Philip, what's your take on Jordan Phillips and some expectations for minicamp? I have zero expectations for minicamp. Jalen Phillips is going to be somebody who's going to do his work with physicality, and minicamp ain't the place for that. Florida Marlins, what's the question? Did I ever cover Florida Marlins? I did at some point. For the Associated Press, I did. Appreciate you. You need a Vancouver Grizzlies hat too, then. I do need one, actually. I used to have a Vancouver Grizzlies t-shirt. I think I might have thrown it out. Shame on me. Okay, let's tackle a few more questions, and then we'll be on our way out. You are the owner. First thing you would change? Bless it, Stephen. You're killing me here, Stefan. You're killing me here. We're going to come up with something like this. I don't think of anything off the top of my head. Because, again, some of the things I would have done differently are already done, and they can't be undone. I don't know. How's that for a lame answer? I don't know. God, I hate wimping out on an answer, and my apologies, Stefan, but I can't. So I can't think of anything that jumps out to me. Kevin Fisher, thank you very much, Kevin. Much appreciated. Love the show. Poop, what's a bold prediction you have for both offense and defense as we go into mandatory minicamp and look towards camp? Bold prediction for minicamp or bold prediction for the regular season? I'm going to assume you mean the regular season. Bold prediction for the defense, Isaiah Johnson starts at cornerback. How's that for a bold prediction? Offense, bold prediction. Bold prediction. I don't know if it's bold. Ollie Gordon beats out Alexander Madison for a roster spot in the number 3 job. That bold? Apologies if it's not bold enough. Dana, my man. Dana, one big account on Expo said Landry was overrated and mediocre. Any thoughts or comment? Oh, you know what? I think I saw that. It's completely ridiculous. Again, if you understand what Jarvis Landry was, which was a pure slot corner, as slot corners go, he was about as good as they got. Not only that, he brought an attitude to the team. So overrated if you're putting him as a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, sure. Overrated if you call him one of the best slot receivers, not remotely. Mediocre, not even close to mediocre. Got way too much money from Cleveland, but that's a Cleveland problem, not a Dolphin problem. But yeah, I think I remember seeing that post, and it was from somebody who likes to make bold posts. I'll leave it like that. Wide receiver Chris Chambers with Marino. I have no issue with it. He's a very good wide receiver. I don't think he's as good as the guys I mentioned, but he was a very good wide receiver. Douglas says, Duper, Clayton, Hill, Warfield. Okay. Raging Dolphin Music Maniac. Sorry, yeah, Raging Dolphins Maniac. No Duper, Clayton Love. I was asked to pick 4. If I were to pick let's say 3 outside and 1 slot, I'd still put Jarvis Landry in the slot. Hill and Warfield would still be my 2 outside wide receivers. And then if maybe Clayton would be the 3rd, that would leave out Irving Fryer was very, very good. Brandon Marshall, for his high maintenance level, was also really, really good. Trying to think. But Clayton's fine. Again, I can't pick all of them. It's nothing personal. Marino and Hill would have hit 2,000 yards in year one. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. When you say Ramsey, the top 50 quarterbacks, saying you're going to combine that with the salary, and there's not a good look for people about that paper. I don't know what paper you're talking about. Oh, nice. That's one I've been meaning to get also, wearing the Oakland A's hat. I like that logo big time. Okay, we have gone on for an hour. I'm going to do a quick final look at the board here for comments and questions, and we're going to wrap it up. See what we got here. It was a clay block versus the Jets at the end of the game. It was late in the fourth quarter. I don't remember exactly how much time. I still would have liked to have Flores over McDaniel. He had a group of less talented players playing at a higher level. I think it was more of a Tua than Flores issue. Yeah, that's been discussed ad nauseum. Flores had the issues with people management, let's put it that way. But in terms of X's and O's, to me, the perfect staff was McDaniel X's and O's on offense and Flores on defense. Woo! Can you do the peace sign again? It's going to upset some people, Dylan, just for you. Come on. It's not doing it. Is it this way? Nope, not doing it anymore. Nope. Yeah, there you go. Oh, there you go. Okay. If it's somebody's birthday, there you go. Happy birthday. Coffee is the breakfast of champions. You said it. Dylan, I'm going to start thinking I'm your performing monkey here if you keep asking me to do these things. Okay, last one. The last one. Okay. Here comes the rain. It's actually pretty funny. Okay. Okay. Same with thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Dylan, you sound like you're a MacBook Pro expert here. I should hit you up one time whenever I have questions. I don't know what that means, Vincent. Hope you got a new Siggy for the collective. Did I? I haven't checked it. By the way, he's talking about the Dolphins Collective, which is also live twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have episodes this week, probably every day, because the Dolphins minicamp, and we'll have one on Monday. I had promised Dave Hyde on Friday. Live from Edmonton did not deliver, so shame on me for that. We'll try to make it happen this week. Uncle Ron, thank you for doing this. It makes me feel part of something, and there isn't much community left in this tough modern world. Dude, you have no idea how much I love that. If this accomplishes nothing other than that, love it. Thank you for saying that. Love it. Steven, just because you give a guy an extension and they agree to it doesn't mean they'll continue to play and stay healthy afterwards. Sure. Nail design, in your opinion, do you feel Mike McDaniel could turn it around this year? If guys stay healthy, the thing with the Dolphins is, and practically every team falls into this category, is you start off, let's say, I don't know how many teams, 6 or 8, whatever, really strong Super Bowl contenders. You have 6 or 8 that really don't have a shot. And everybody else, if a certain number of questions get the right answers, who knows how far they can go. The Dolphins are in that middle group. If everything goes right, or most of the things where there are question marks go right and they stay healthy, sure, why couldn't they make a run? But that requires Patrick Paul being the right answer at left tackle, Jonas Savaiinaia being who they thought he was when they picked him in the second round at guard, defense, the young defensive tackles producing, the cornerbacks position being adequate. So their margin for error, I think, is lesser than a lot of teams, but there's no reason why it couldn't. So this notion that Dolphins are going to suck immediately, don't buy it. I do not buy it. Thank you, Scott. Very kind of you. That's a great question. Brantley McFetridge, who's your favorite Dolphin of all time, Alan? That's a great question. it's also very all-encompassing. Tell you Mark Dixon was up there. I love Mark Dixon. I really like Devon Best too. Yeah, I don't necessarily go with like the obvious ones, the big ones. I think Ricky Williams impressed a crap out of me as a running back. Like, man, that guy. If circumstances had been better, not only him not getting himself suspended, but also he hadn't been so overused in 2002, 2003. That guy was some kind of special as a running back. I mean, he's up there for me. Mark Dixon was just a really, really good offensive lineman who was just really, really smart and really, really interesting in dealing with. Those are guys that pop up in my mind. Chad Pennington's on the one. Fitzpatrick, I loved. Again, such a good dude. I'm not going to sit here and say the best quarterback the Dolphins have ever had, but he was like as a dude, he was a blast to cover for 2 years. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. I apologize. And you know what, Steph? I'm going to make that my homework assignment and try to come up with something, because that was very lame on my part. Landry was a slot corner. Did I say corner? Slot receiver. Come on, Marsalis. You know what I meant. But fine, I will bow my head in shame for having said that. Okay, bowing done. Oh. Normally I can enjoy the slide, but tomorrow is a national holiday. Enjoy it. Enjoy the day, my friend. Ross, worst owner in sport. Not even close. Not even close. Sorry. Jeff, best part about Landy was you knew he was going to catch it. She had sure hands. Absolutely. He had him, Arande Gaston, OJ McDuffie are the three that stand out to me when I think of like great hands among Dolphin receivers. Crazy good hands. Okay. Who's a camp body we don't talk about you think we need to know for preseason? Mention Isaiah Johnson would be one. Theo Wees Jr., wide receiver, rookie free agent. Some Ethan Robinson, the free agent cornerback, is a guy I would keep an eye on. I saw somewhere. Where am I going? Oh, this thing jumped over here. Okay, hold on. Marsalis is bail. I think I have to bail too. This jumped all over the place. There we go. Okay. Jeff, do you have any fun Fasano stories? Miss that guy and his big catches. You mean the fact that he can really look like John Travolta? No, he was like a good dude. No, I don't have any fun stories. He is somebody who did not necessarily care for talking to the media. He was always like very, very, that cliche playbook and all that. But once the recorder came off, he was a good dude. But I don't necessarily have stories about him. Apologies. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm trying to look for a couple of quick questions real quick. And I apologize if your questions don't get asked. There's too many of them for me to go. I'm going to try to see if I can get people who haven't called, whose questions or comments I haven't brought up yet. Carlos, I haven't brought up anything from you yet. When do you think McDaniel starts feeling his seat is like warm and then scorching hot? Scorching hot won't be until the end of the season unless they start off 0-5, which is when, if they start off 0-2, it's warm. If they're 0-5, it's scorching hot. Here we go. No, what? I got to put this up. Dave, I've enjoyed your work over the last 500 plus, and I've been a fan since '84. I go in with no expectations in the year besides playing hard, win or lose. I will be buried in the Dolphins casket. Yeah, exactly. You go in, go in with high hopes, and if they don't materialize, I mean, they don't materialize. It's like, again, I don't go in thinking they're going to the Super Bowl, but don't go in thinking they're going 0-17 either. I mean, okay. Finn's rule, yours or Wilson going to be number 2 QB? It's going to be Zach Wilson. Troy, does Tua have these next 2 seasons to prove he can take his team to the next level? If not, absolutely. Yeah. Which is why they haven't touched his contract, even though they can create 20 mil in cap space by restructuring and adding more money down the road. Finn for life, Seattle Seahawks last game in the Kingdom 2000. I'm thinking that was Dan Marino's last game too. When was Dan Marino's last year? It was his next to last game. It was his last win, which was in the playoffs following the 1999 season. After they won that Seattle 2017, they played at Jacksonville the following Saturday afternoon. And if you're a Dolphin fan old enough or you're familiar with this, they got beat bad in Jacksonville. Mr. Poupart, why does it seem to have a hard time building an offensive line? It's a very good question. Not because I haven't tried. Duriel Harris. No, Duriel Harris would not make my top 4. Okay, you know what? That's going to wrap it up. Guys, again, big thanks. I'm going to do the hard thing again. Thanks for joining me for another, what I hope was an enjoyable episode. Please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Again, I will be back here on Monday. Discuss what's going on. And we will be here this week to wrap up what we see during the open mini camps. Again, thanks so very much for tuning in and spending this hour with me. Much appreciated. And have a great rest of the day. The night, I should say. Whoop.